Hello and welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. It's time for another transfer show, and it's a very special transfer show because, as you can see, I'm joined by Sky Sports' Anthony Josip to go over all the latest transfer rumours surrounding Celtic. Anthony, thank you for joining us again, mate.
Well, thanks for having us on. How you doing? You all right?
Aye, good. Almost shook off this cold, so I am getting there.
I've got
Anthony,
a cold as well, so we might sound a bit like a Ange press conference with a coughing.
I know. Aye. Count the coughs. Anthony, when I booked this, when I arranged this with you last week, I was thinking we might not have too much to talk about, but the last few days things seem to have generally heated up again. I want to start by talking about the links to Gue-Sung Cho, the South Korean striker that we seem to have been linked with since during the World Cup. Things have picked up on that front today.
Yeah, they have. I mean, it was Sunday when I was working that got told that a bid had gone in, and it was a bid of around £3 million, and things have, I would say, developed quite quickly. We've got Park Ji-sung, who is, yes, the former Man United player, but he's also the technical director at Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors. I'll try and get their name right. And he's in London, where I am as well, and he's in talks with Celtic, trying to negotiate this deal that could potentially happen. Celtic have got their £3 million bid in. We know that Mainz were the first club to bid for him, and that offer was just lower than what Celtic's bid is. But our understanding is that they don't plan to raise their bid or to match Celtic's bid either. And I think their chief executive, I think it was talking today, saying that if it goes higher, or the figures that are being talked about in the media, which we know is Celtic's offer, they won't be able to match that. So that stands Celtic in good stead. What did throw a little spanner in the works, I think, was this morning, some reports from South Korea to say that Minnesota United were at the table and had come in with a bid that was higher than Celtic's. Just before I came on to speak to you today, I've had confirmation that Minnesota are interested and they feel they're very much at the table still, even though Park is in London talking to Celtic. So I think this could rumble on for a wee bit. What the promising signs for Celtic, I think, are that Cho has spoken about his desire to play in Europe. He's sought out advice from his international teammate's son at Spurs, who's advised him to come to Europe as well. So I think if it is a decision between Scotland and the MLS, Celtic are in a strong position as a club in Europe, a club that plays in the Champions League, a club that could give them that big exposure. Although over in the Far East, he doesn't need that big exposure, does he? Which is another reason I think this could be a really shrewd signing if Celtic can pull it off. I think he's shown at the World Cup. Let's talk about his on-field bits first. I mean, he's shown at the World Cup he's a quality striker, can be a real handful for defences. But commercially, this could be very clever for Celtic if they can pull it off. He's a heartthrob in his homeland. He has nearly 3 million Instagram followers now.
That's crazy.
And he was front page of Vogue in Korea last month. It could be a good signing on and off the field for Celtic if they can pull it off. They're in a very strong position. But like I say, I've just had confirmation that Minnesota are at the table as well. So we just got to see how this develops. But I know there's a lot of Celtic fans at the moment who are running out of patience on this one. But I would say since the bid went in on Sunday, this has moved quite quickly. The fact that Park's here in London and it's Tuesday. So it could rumble on for a wee bit longer. So stay patient.
Yeah, and that's in contrast, isn't it, to Celtic's other dealings, particularly in Japan. Obviously, we've already made 3 signings this month, 2 of them from Japan. And the thing that strikes you about those deals, even going back to last season, Kyogo being the first one, is that they came out of nowhere. and they didn't rumble on like transfer deals tend to do, where there was weeks of, well, this club's interested now, this club's interested now, and it gets to a bit of a bidding war. The Japanese signings haven't had any of those factors, so this is a bit different, and it just depends how high whatever Minnesota's bid is, if it is higher, are Celtic going to match it? And then, as you say, does that make it rumble on further into the month where John Book are trying to get the highest possible fee for him?
Yeah, that could be the case, but I also think Celtic could still get Cho with a lower bid than Minnesota, because if Cho really wants to play in Europe and he really wants to sign for Celtic, as far as I'm aware, though, John Book are not trying to stand in their way. I think the negotiations are taking place around add-ons, clauses, that kind of things. So I don't think there's any issue with the transfer fee. In the same way that there was no issue with the Mainz transfer fee. Okay. It's just that they don't feel that they can match what Celtic are offering, and the player has spoken. The player and his agent have spoken themselves about admiring the fact that Celtic have dipped into the Asian market. Well, more than dipped into it. We've got six Japanese players. So, and if Cho comes, then there's Celtic. You could feel a squad of mainly Asian Celtic players, which would, it just shows you that the pulling power that they have now, and also the fact that they are really strongly connected in that market.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some questions on Twitter, Anthony, and as you said, I think the Celtic fans are getting a wee bit impatient with this one because it's the links came so early in the World Cup. But what's your gut feel on it? Do you think that he'll end up a Celtic player? We're in a strong position. Meeting today, hopefully we can get it done.
I hate saying stuff like this because something could change. Something could change. It does come back to me. I will say I think Celtic are in a good position, and perhaps still in pole position because he wants to move to Europe. I think it would take a huge pull from Minnesota to get him over to America when he wants to break into Europe. He sought advice from someone he looks up to, his South Korean teammate's son. He advised him to move to Europe, and now's the time. So I think that could sway it in Celtic's favour.
Just the last one on the Cho deal, Anthony. You don't know of any other European clubs that are interested aside from Mainz, of course?
Well, yeah, we do. My colleague Sahil in Scotland, he's a Scotland editor at Sky Sports. He did follow up on the reports that Rangers were interested, and basically, as his understanding is that they're aware of the player. I mean, how can you not be aware of the player? But they've made no bid. So my reading between the lines there is he was perhaps on a list, on a short list there, but he's not one of their priority targets. So they've certainly not made a bid. I think if he was their priority target, they would have Celtic and Rangers would be in a bidding war by now.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. I think the rumours surrounding Juranovic and Giakoumakis again have been going on for a good few weeks now. The strange thing with Juranovic was after the World Cup and how well he did there, we thought that might drive up his fee. Now this week there has been links to Serie A side Monza with £7 million bid. Now I think it's safe to say that's considerably lower than we thought it would be if he was to move on. I know nothing's been, no bid has been accepted or anything yet, but what's your understanding of the Juranovic situation just now? And the big question is, does he have some form of release clause that's that low?
I'll answer that big question first, is that I'm not sure if he's got a release clause, but I'm certainly not aware of it. And I think I'd be surprised if he had a release clause as low as that. But on Juranovic, I've actually got to be careful with what I say here, as we haven't reported any further update on this yet, for good reason. I mean, there are a lot of clubs in for Juranovic, and one's a lot bigger than Monza. I know there's reports in Scotland saying he is close to signing for Monza, but I don't think he's close to signing for anyone at the moment. We've reported in the past interest from Premier League clubs. We named Chelsea as one of those clubs. We know there's a lot of other Premier League clubs who are interested as well, and in La Liga as well. We know Barcelona and Atletico Madrid registered their interest. So, and that interest hasn't changed. That hasn't gone away. There's been no formal bids gone in for him from those clubs. So, he's clearly in demand, and Celtic have been braced for these offers ever since the World Cup. He had a great World Cup and was one of the best players at the tournament. He's going to be 28, so this is possibly his last chance for a big move. I'm talking like a big money move. I know it's harder to get a bigger club than Celtic, but I'd be very surprised if that move is Monza, and I'd be very surprised if he went for as low as 7 million.
Yeah, you talk about the the Premier League interest there, and I read today on the last couple of days, West Ham, Fulham, Man United. So he does seem like a player that's on a lot of clubs' short list if they're looking to strengthen it right back. Even some of the bigger clubs looking for backup in that position for maybe players who are currently injured, or teams looking for a long-term right back. He seems to be on a lot of clubs' radar, and again, that's something that you think would help Celtic in terms of a negotiating position.
Yeah, definitely. And the only thing I would say to suggestions that he might have a £7 million release clause, and like I say, I don't know if that's the case, and I would be surprised if that's the case, is if that was the case, you'd think that almost every Premier League club who wants a right back, or La Liga club who wants a right back, would just trigger that £7 million release clause, and then it would be a war of who gives them the best.
Celtic would have to accept it as well.
Yeah. So and so I think that might lead to your answer there. But again, I've not had confirmation about anything to do with his contract in terms of that kind of clause or anything. But I think that sort of alludes to our conclusion there.
Yeah, we were speculating because there was murmurings back at the time he joined the club that this was the deal that Don Mackay was involved in before he left, that the hierarchy at the club didn't like. So I think that's where the fear about a low release clause came after that Monza story. But that's an interesting insight. We'll see how that one develops. Again, I think that's one that's going to rumble on as well. I don't expect that to be concluded in the next few days. I think there's plenty of legs in that yet. We've talked about the links with Cho. Clear that Celtic are trying to bring in a striker, and it seems increasingly clear, Anthony, that we're going to lose one in Giorgios Giakoumakis. Links again with a few clubs. The contract situation is the same as Juranovic. He's got 3.5 years left to run, but he's also at a similar age, and he hasn't had many starts this season. I think 7 starts in all competitions, which is low. Kyogo's clearly been the manager's first choice, and I think he's at the stage of his career where he's looking to get first team minutes week in and week out. Uwara from Japan were the team closely linked during the week. Have you got any update on that in terms of other clubs interested?
Yeah, I mean, this is another one that I don't believe is as close as being reported by some media outlets. So obviously seeing the Japanese club are reportedly throwing everything they've got to try and lure him to Japan. But my understanding was that if he wasn't able to agree terms on a new deal with Celtic, both parties were almost accepting that they would part, and that would be his preference, would be to go to a European club. So there are still clubs in Europe, in Italy and Germany, for example, who are keen on him as well. I mean, before he moved to Celtic, I was told that he is very much motivated by money, which is why he was trying to negotiate terms on a new contract. He's only on around £11,000 per week, so he's far from one of the top earners at the club. But he'll be able to get more than that elsewhere in Europe, and it sounds like he'd be able to get more of that at Urawa Reds in Japan. So I think it would be a shame for Celtic to lose him, because I think he's a great option to have, and you can see the value he brings, but you can also understand his frustrations. That I think in a way he might feel undervalued at Celtic. I think he feels he should be starting, and he probably has a good case for that as well, because when he does play, he scores and he does do well. He creates chances. He links up play. He's actually a very good player to start for Celtic as well. So he probably feels a little bit undervalued, and hence why he was looking for terms that were closer to some of the top earners at the club. But yeah, Celtic are looking at replacements already, as you know. So I think that tells the story as to what direction that's going to take. I think he is going to go. It'll be interesting to see the fee that he goes for, actually, because I think originally, certainly conversations I had, Celtic would have probably looked for something over £10 million, but I think they might struggle to get that, considering his situation at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the big question. I was going to ask you about the fee, because we're unaware as to what the club are looking for. I think £10 million is high, and listen, I think he's a good player as well. I think you can see what his qualities are. I just think he's always going to be option B for Ange Postecoglou in this team. I think he prefers someone in the style of Kyogo, and that doesn't mean he can't contribute. He was a massive contributor last season, but the thing that happened last season that hasn't happened so far this season, and touch wood it doesn't, is that Kyogo had a long spell out injured, which gave him that window to get minutes. So I know a lot of people think he's been somewhat unfairly treated, but I think the writing's on the wall with this one, and I do think he's going to go. You touched on the fee there. Do you think? I mean, £6 million would be triple the investments Celtic made in him. So even if it was lower than 10, do you expect it to be maybe somewhere around 6?
Well, anything beyond the initial fee, 10% is due to go to VVV Venlo, the club Celtic signed him for. Yeah, I could see it something between, or it might end up being like an initial fee of £5 million that rises to 7 or 8 or something like that. So it's a strange one, because in other circumstances, Celtic are in a very strong position. He's contracted to the club for another 3.5 years, I think it is.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Juranovic as well, actually. But it's well known that they were not able to agree new terms, and it's well known that the player wants to leave now. So it's a case of cashing in with what you can get. His stock drops when other clubs know that he wants out. He's Celtic's option B. Celtic are going for another striker already, so it'll just be about taking what they can get, but also maximising that. But it's not going to be as much as what Celtic had probably previously had hoped.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, Stephen Welsh. This is coming. Circling back to a rumour in the summer when Stephen Welsh was linked to moves away. Also last January as well, I think there was interest in him. But this has just developed today that there might be some movement there this month.
Yeah, so Celtic's position on Stephen Welsh has changed a bit compared to last year and also in the summer. They're now willing to listen to offers for him if any clubs come in. We know there's interest from the MLS and other clubs in Europe as well. My understanding is that Ange is a fan of Welsh. He likes the way he trains. He likes his attitude. He likes his willingness to learn. And we actually saw that with Celtic's reluctance to let him go in last January and in the summer. I mean, in the summer, Celtic knocked back a season-long loan bid with an option to buy 3.5 million for Welsh from Toulouse. So And in January last year, it was a knockback from the Celtic knockback to an offer from Udinese, the Serie A club. So they clearly wanted to keep him. They clearly thought there was potential there, or he's good cover to have. He's a good backup. I actually think he is good backup to have. So, but I think they're thinking more about the welfare and the career progression of the player in this instance. So, as much as they like to have him around, they would like to have him in the squad. They also understand Welsh's needs to and desires to play regular first team football and to go and progress in his own career. And he does have desires to also play abroad, so that could be a destination that he leaves Scotland. So I mean, but also Celtic are prepared for this as well, or maybe weren't preparing for this, but they've certainly felt there are better defenders to go out and buy because they've got Yuki Kobayashi, who's signed this window from Vissel Kobe, and they've also got Moritz Jens, who has an option to buy on his loan. So there's 4 good centre-backs at Celtic already, very good centre-backs, that you probably say are, well, actually, I can't possibly say that Kobayashi is better than Welsh, because I've never seen Kobayashi. I'm saying there's 4 centre-backs that they've actually signed, Carter Vickers, Starfelt, Jens and Kobayashi. And if Welsh goes and they don't decide to sign Jens in the summer, then they'll probably be looking for a centre back, because I think we need 4 good centre backs, and I think we've already seen that this season with injuries to Starfelt in Carter Vickers and that. So I think you definitely need 4 good centre backs.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how that one develops. As you say, I think probably best for the player to go out and get some first team football, but where are the club at with Moritz Jens? We don't know. He hasn't been involved at all since the return for the World Cup. Are we going to take up the option at the end of the season? Who knows? Maybe a loan deal would be best for Stephen Welsh, because it means we can reintroduce him if we want him as a squad option at the start of next season. But it'll be interesting to see how that one progresses. We know there's been interest in him before, so we'll keep tabs on that one as the month goes on. Anything else for us, Anthony, in terms of outgoings before the window opened? There was a lot of murmurings around the likes of Abelgard, Ida that they are there for the off.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are likely to leave at some point, whether it'll be this window or the next one. I mean, Abelgard just hasn't really played, has he? Just hasn't made an impact, it seems. And I'd be surprised if he stayed beyond his 1-year deal. Might also be because of complications. Well, remember his contract is a bit strange. It's a 1-year deal due to the suspension of his Zenit contract because of the sanctions that are placed on doing business with Russian companies. So there is the complication of that, and Celtic would maybe need to enter into further complicated matters if they were to try to sign him on a longer term deal permanently.
He's just not done enough to justify that.
I know. So that would be very surprising if Andrew was to say, "Yeah, we're going to get him on a 5-year deal." And they've also signed Tomoki Iwata, haven't they? So a defensive midfielder has come in this window. And Ideguchi, I mean, that's another that just hasn't worked out so far. I mean, I'd imagine if he could find a club elsewhere, perhaps he does want to stay in Europe, then I think he'd go with Celtic's best wishes. The other one I think they've got to make a decision on soon as well is James McCarthy. I always thought he was a strange signing, and especially on the deal that he was given. He was given a long-term contract. Clearly wasn't an Ange signing at the time he came in. He just doesn't suit the style of play. He slows the game down. Celtic were looking to offload him in the summer, but nobody came forward with a formal offer. I think he'd be allowed to leave if anyone was to come in with an offer, be that a permanent deal or a loan. But yeah, I think Celtic are in good shape. They've done some of their business early already. They've got 3 players in. Um, I think once they've got the striker situation solved, once they've perhaps seen off Juranovic and Giakoumakis, I think they'll be quite content. I don't think we'd see too many incomings that weren't related to an outgoing. I think they'll also be looking at the summer as well. So the way Ange seems to operate and wants his recruitment team to operate is to plan ahead. I mean, they've got Juranovic's replacement in already before Juranovic has left. That happened with Tom Rogic as well before they properly knew whether he was going to sign a contract or not. They'd already got a replacement in Matt O'Reilly, so that's good, I think, for Celtic, and it's very different to perhaps how they've acted in the transfer windows in the past. But also the way they're recruiting is really positive, in my opinion. They've been scouring the globe, they sent scouts to countries like the UAE, Iran, South Korea, and they've identified targets in the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia, of course. They've signed 2 players from the J League this window and 1 from the MLS. They're not looking in their traditional markets that they have done before, and they're finding real gems, because Ange doesn't just want to bring in a player that is a good player. He feels he wants to know their character, and I think it's a really good way that they're approaching transfer windows now, and it's like they've got a system that seems to be working at the moment.
Yeah, and it's so refreshing that the difference in how we're doing business now is such a departure from where we've been, certainly in my lifetime following Celtic, to be planning ahead and bringing in replacements before our top players even leave. So we are in a strong position going forward. Anthony, before you leave us, I just want to touch on maybe a couple of questions here from Twitter. We've probably covered a few of them. Does Anthony think the £7 million for Jura is too low? I think we touched on that. I think that's pretty low.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Darren Conway, should we be concerned that we are selling 2 of our best players on the cheap? I think that's a bit early because we haven't sold anyone yet. No bids have been accepted. You would like to think that Juranovic, if he was going to go, would be for higher than 7 million, and we've kind of touched on the Giakoumakis fee as well. So if it was to be around,
I think that person's point is valid. Should we be concerned that they're selling 2 of our best players, perhaps? Because you would regard Juranovic and Giakoumakis even as 2 valuable players. But what I would say is what we touched on a couple of minutes ago is they've got ready-made replacements. Celtic have got their replacement right back in already. They've got Alistair Johnston in. He had a great World Cup. They're trying to get Giakoumakis as his replacement in as well, and they're moving fast with that now. So there's a bid in for a replacement before they've even left, and I think that is as good as you can get it in terms of doing your recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely. Last one here, but I believe this is one for the summer because you kind of touched on it there. Any other positions we're looking at, like goalkeeper? We talked about this a few weeks ago. Not just now, but I think it will be something the club have to look at pretty soon.
It will be long term. It will be definitely. But I think they're happy with Joe Hart. They're happy with Siegrist as backup. They've got Scott Bain there as well, and who knows what will happen with Barkas when he returns, or if he returns. Yeah. But I mean, stranger things have happened. But I think, yeah, perhaps in the summer. If not in the summer, then next January they'll probably look to bring in a goalkeeper that's for the long term.
Yeah. Okay. Anthony, thank you for your time and for your insight. Much appreciated. And hopefully we can maybe get you on again before the transfer window closes.
That's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Paul.
Cheers, Anthony.